Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I am here with Shane Tassoul. He is the owner of Champion Martial Arts out in Wisconsin. And you may have seen him in Facebook groups if you're in the martial arts industry or at MAIA events because he's been a longtime consultant for MAIA, the Martial Arts Industry Association. So, Shane, thanks for coming on here today.
Thank you, Matthew. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be with you today because as a consultant for a long time, I feel like you've probably heard it all, right?
Right.
Like, what are people's excuses for running their martial arts business in terms of not being where they want to be? And I'm sure a lot of success stories as well. So,
100%.
how long have you been doing consulting?
Consulting's been, gosh, I want to say about 8 years now. Yeah.
8 years. Okay, cool. And was that your intention? Like, you opened up a martial arts school and like, all right, I'll open up a martial arts school and then I'll do consulting later, or is that just something that fell into your lap?
No, it was I don't know, it was never it was never a conscious decision or like an end goal, right? It was kind of something that just had happened, over time. So, just kind of give you a backstory. So I started martial arts when I was 9 years old. Probably like a lot of us, we started when we were kids. I was started in the early '80s, right? The Karate Kid era, the whole deal. My mom actually, and my mom and dad gave me a martial art uniform. It was a Christmas gift under the tree, and so I started martial arts in the Korean martial arts, Taekwondo. And I remember when I started, I had said to my mom years later, I had said, "Why did you pick that school?" And this will give you an idea of how old I am, right? She goes, "Well, I looked in the yellow pages, and whoever had the biggest ad, like that's the school that I decided I wanted to suddenly open, right?" So no, I trained there for a lot of years, and then college came, and then that organization kind of broke up, and then I had the opportunity in college to, open a little on the satellite school at college. So I did that, and then decided college wasn't for me. Went to 2 years of college, and said, "Hey, it's not for me." And I remember my high school English teacher had said, I was somehow I ended up in an honors English class, which I was not a good student, so I don't know how that
Mhm.
happened. But he said we're going to write a lot of papers, and he said, um, and I
Oh,
remember
joy.
thinking, like, oh man, we're going to write
Yeah.
papers. But he said, this is
Great.
what he said to me: if you write a paper about something that you know about and care about, you'll write an A paper every time. And I thought, well, man, if he's telling me the truth, if I just write about martial arts, I'll ace this class. Well, sure enough, that's what happened, right? So when I quit school, you talk about mentors and things. I didn't know what I was going to do, right? I just knew I hated college, didn't want to do it. And then I thought, well, geez, if I do something I know about and care about, maybe I'll do an okay job at that. And so that's when I started my first martial arts school. And so going down and we can come back to some of that story, but as I was going through, I opened my first school when I was 20, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna on purpose, I'm gonna make every mistake possible so that I know that, and I've got time to recover because I'm young, but I want to make sure that I've done it all. And so maybe the early me kind of knew, like, okay, try everything and see if it works, and then maybe not only you'll be able to help yourself later, but you'll be able to help other people. So the consulting thing was never really on the radar. It's just something that had happened later on as a result of me being a client and then really excelling as a client, and then being asked to join the team. So that's kind of how all that transpired.
Okay, cool. So, did you get seed money from someone or take out a loan to start your school? How did you actually start it?
Oh man, no, I had no seed money. I remember thinking I was a hot shot at 20 years old, man. So the school that I was a part of, the organization that kind of broke up, they had moved their location. And so we were literally in a plaza, a little shopping plaza, this vacant space now because they had moved, was in the shopping plaza behind a local bar, because there are a lot of those in Wisconsin, right? A Little Caesars Pizza, a Too Little for Me consignment shop, and then behind that was this dumpy old place where I trained in martial arts. And so I remember going in to get to negotiate my first lease at 20 years old, and it was like $750 a month for rent or something, right? But it was already, I say, built out. It was a raised, like, raised floor, 6 or 8 inch floor that was kind of the seating area with a little knee wall or half wall, and then that overlooked the martial arts dojo or dojan floor with a post in the middle. You have to have those, right? And
Yeah.
then literally had a small little office. At the time, it was a guy's locker room and a gal's locker room, right? Which we don't even do those anymore. And the whole floor was covered with this real thin red ugly carpet, and it was over cement, right? And so I'm like, oh, it's already built out for a more, it was just a big empty space because it was the martial
Yeah.
arts school before. And I remember telling the guy when I was going to get the lease, I said, "Well, the guy across the street, there was a for lease sign in the building across, and I had never gone there. I said, he's going to give me a month free." And he's like, "Well, we can do that." I'm like, "Okay, done. I'll do it." Right. So that was me negotiating my first
Damn,
lease.
savage
Yeah,
negotiator.
right. It's me thinking I knew a lot, and I was all excited about that. And then, at the time, went out and flyered cars, and this was back in the day of NAPMA and MAIA, where you'd get the kits, and then you'd have the ad slicks, and then you literally have to cut out the offer that you'd want, glue it or tape it onto the ad slick, and then put it on the copy machine and copy it, right? And so I'd spend my days like putting everything on the flyer just the way I wanted to. And my mom would always tell me, she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you taking so long? Like, just get it done and get it finished so you can get it out there." Because I was always real meticulous about it. But we flyered cars, and I think I enrolled like 8 or 12 students, probably at $69 a month back then, from a parade that was going on. And I had like a dozen students that trained there. I was actually paying to have a martial arts school because I didn't have enough money coming in from my students to be able to afford the lease that was there. So that
Hmm,
was my first school, man. So
got
no,
it.
no seed money, no nothing. Just
But
started.
how did you get the $750 to open? I'm assuming they made you put down a deposit also. Like, was that just money you had saved up from another job, or your
Yeah,
parents
so
helped you out?
I had worked from the time I was, 13, 14 years old. So I had some money stashed away, right? But there wasn't a bunch because when I went to college, I pissed it all away. So I didn't have a lot of money left.
Yeah.
But and then I was working another job at the time as well. And so that's how it literally it was a canvas hanging bag. The mirrors were already on the wall. And then I had a buddy who had a martial arts school, and we decided we were going to share the same name at the time. And so he had a sign that he couldn't put on his building because of permits. So he just gave me the sign. So I put the sign in the room, and that was it, man. We were off to the races, and that was
Cool.
it. It was a bare bone school.
I think the one thing people take for granted is that if you don't do a lot of the fancy frills, like, you can open up a martial arts school for really cheap,
Oh, it's
right?
yeah,
Like, you don't need much compared to any other business, like a restaurant or a bar or anything with any sort of specialty equipment. Like, we don't have our specialty equipment is like a Wave Master, right? It's like, oh, wow, like the $180 or however much that costs, right? Maybe
right,
200 bucks.
right. Yeah, when you
And
don't
the
have
cool
mats, right? Then you can when you sell it or you give the tour, you talk about the reason you don't have mats is because they're so soft and people can twist their knees and their ankles. So
I never heard that
I
argument,
can
but
sell on the mats, right? I can sell if I
yeah.
have mats, or I can sell if I don't have mats. You just flip it around a little bit. So we didn't have the cash to afford mats, so
Yeah.
that's what we did, man.
Yeah. We don't have mats like those wimpy martial arts school down the
That's right.
street. Oh my god, those guys have those guys are terrible. They have bad knees. Uh, so you had your school. How long did it take you to be what you felt as successful?
So the first yeah, so that was a 12-month lease I had on the place, which is nothing, when you consider today. I was probably 10 months in. And when I had gone to college, I had met a gal, and she lived in Chicago, so about a 3-hour drive from me. And so when I quit college, she was still going to school, but then in the summertime, she'd go back home. And, you know, in college, before I quit, I had this is back in 92 when the internet came out, right? So, like, literally when the internet came out, there was this company called B&C Communications. It was Business Network Communications. And I remember when I knew I was done with college, I was still at college, living the party life and living off the free food that my parents bought, right? And finishing out, I say finishing out, but just finishing out the party life at school. I had gone online and I saw this, this was when the big, you'd buy the binder online of like a business in a box type thing. And so
Mhm.
Business Network Communications is the name of the company. And I remember I got the manual and I went to the library, probably the only time I went to the library, and I devoured this manual, right? And the whole premise of it was you'd go into a store, whether it was a restaurant, a grocery store, wherever, and in the front at the time, they'd have pay phones in the front of the stores, right? And you'd pick up the phone and you hit zero and see who the long distance provider was. And if it wasn't their long distance provider, you'd go to the manager. I would say, hey, look, can I talk to the manager? I just want to make sure you guys understand you're not receiving full commissions on your phones, and I can help you guys with that. I just need you to sign here. And then literally we would change over their long distance provider, right? So, and I get a $25 commission per phone. And so what ended up happening was, I'd go in these stores and they had two phones on each side of the grocery store. So there's four phones. and I was racking up all these contracts. And then it got close to summer. School was out. The cat was out of the bag that I was done. Got kicked out of my house. My mom and dad didn't want anything to do with me. So I went down to Chicago to visit my girlfriend on a
Wait,
long
why would they
weekend.
kick you out? What were you doing?
It was what I wasn't doing. It's because I quit school, man. They didn't want me to quit school.
Okay.
That
So you quit
was the
school
big
and they're
rub.
like, "All right, just figure it out on your own then if you're gonna
That's
do
right.
that."
That was the big rub.
Okay.
Like, you quit school and you shouldn't have quit school, and
Were they
that was the
paying
big
for
rub.
school or were you paying for school?
No, man, it was 16,000 a year at the time, and they were paying for it. And my dad knew it was a problem when they did orientation because there was T-shirts that day that said 9-month party, $16,000 cover charge. And he's like, "Oh, what am I getting myself into?"
Oh my god. What school is this?
So St. Norbert College, it was in Green Bay area in Wisconsin here. So private
Okay,
school,
notorious party school.
party school, yeah, yeah, and probably the only school I could get into because my grades weren't good enough to get into other schools. So if you could pay it, you could you got accepted type deal. So yeah, man. So anyway, I went down to Chicago, stayed there for a long weekend, which turned into a month, and then finally her parents are like, "All right, you got to go, you got to get out, you got to go back." Came back. We ended up breaking up. And so when we ended up breaking up, I remember I was frustrated, and so I just started the martial arts school previous, and we had that canvas hanging bag, and I remember just pounding on that bag, and tore up my knuckles, had bloody knuckles, and because I wasn't the martial arts school wasn't working and making enough money. I had another job during the day, which I would go and sell computer based cash register systems to convenience stores and grocery stores. But then at night, I would also, after classes were done, I would actually go and I would bartend right across the street. Well, when I was bartending, a guy had a shirt on that said Club Fit, and I hadn't, my school wasn't very successful at this point, right? And I was serving him his drink, and he looked at my hand. He goes, "Oh, did you get in a fight?" I said, "Nah." I said, "I have a martial arts school." I said, "I was just working on the bag." And he goes, "Oh." And I saw his shirt, and I knew that they were a new health club in town. And so I went back and I started making his drink. And by the time I got back to give him his drink, I said, this is a bullshit line. I'm like, "I've been meaning to come out and talk to you guys." I said, "I'd love to take our martial arts program and put it inside, the health club in your aerobics room." Now, I didn't even know if they had an aerobics room, to be honest. I never even been to the club.
Mm.
And he goes, "Man, that's a great idea." And so he's like, "Why don't we meet on Monday?" This was a Friday or Saturday, right? So we met on Monday, and we moved the martial arts school over, and then he brought me on and started to teach me on how to help sell health club memberships. So I'd sell health club memberships during the day, and then at nighttime I'd do my martial art program. And it gave me so much more exposure to people because there were so many people. They had a daycare there as well. So I'd go in the daycare and teach little lessons and pull kids out and get parents to sign their kids up. So when I was there, we probably got to 120 students. And at that time, I was single, probably doing 15 grand a month. And, my expenses were extremely low. And that's probably the time that I thought, like, man, I arrived. Like, this is the cat's ass, right? Things were great.
Yeah, I feel like I've never felt more rich than, my first. I think the first year I made, not the first year I made this amount, but the first year I made six figure, I think it was like 115K or something. It was, I think, my third year of business and like, personal income I made. And I remember I've never, even though make a lot more than that now, like I've never felt more rich than then. Never.
It's
Right.
all
And
relative,
it's like
right?
that
At that
first one.
age,
Yeah.
no
Yeah, exactly. I was like
responsibility.
24 and like it was just like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah,
Right. There's like nothing better.
100%.
And, I taught little kids karate. It's like, it's not that, I mean, it's a hard, it's not like it's easy business, but like, I didn't have some like professional degree. Right.
Yeah, but look,
Uh,
man, I mean, you know the deal. If like, I remember one time, I remember going from that, and then later on, right, starting to gross 35, 40,000 a month. And then I was like, remember, like, literally walking in my uniform, walking the lines as I was teaching, and looked in the mirror, and I'm like, damn, man, I have the greatest job in the world. Like, I literally get to walk barefoot, wear my pajamas, and generate 30, 40,000 dollars a month in revenue and do something I love to do, right? And that
hmm.
was so. If you're passionate about it, the grind is hard. The hours are, there's the easy part. You can get up late and show up at the school late, right? Especially when I was young. man, it was nice showing up at 3:55 for a 4 o'clock class and getting there
Oh my
5 minutes
god.
before, right?
Yeah.
There's that part of it, but I think overall, it's if you're passionate about it, and people, the old cliche, right? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. But it is very true, and when you're passionate about it, it does come easy, and it's a fun time, man. The hours as I got older, the hours got to be a lot longer, and it's a lot of time on the floor at night, and it's a lot of grind,
Yeah. I mean,
some good
listen, eating
days,
dinner at 9 o'clock at night or 9:30 or 10 o'clock.
right?
I feel like when you're young, it's fine, but then as you get older, it's like, I don't know if I wanna be, eating dinner at 9:30, 10,
Right, right on.
waking up late every day. So at what point did you decide to open up number 2, and how did that happen?
So this was all pretty much just me, and really not much of a staff. So I was at the health club. Um, you know, the health club was going under. My folks had a chain of 5 grocery stores.
So your martial arts program at the club just destroyed it.
So yeah, right, pretty
You're
much. So he was opening units way too fast, and he was spending company money and embezzling money, which we came to learn later. But
Mm.
he knew my folks were in the grocery industry, and they had done very well for themselves. And so he had approached me. He's like, "Man, we're really in a bloodbath right now, and we could use some help." And so somehow convinced my dad to come in, have a conversation, and unbeknownst to me until later on, my dad gave the guy like 150 grand to help him with his business, which
Oh my god.
lasted maybe another 9 or 10 months, and then he just disappeared, and the money disappeared with him. I'm like, Dad, do you know what I could have done with 150 grand in martial arts school? Like,
Yeah.
if you want to keep the health club so you could keep my martial arts school alive, you should just give me the 150 grand, man. Could have
Yeah.
done better things. So they literally, I remember they were coming to move equipment out. They hadn't paid the light bill. Lights were off. And this is when you get creative in your martial art class where you do like a ninja workout, right? Because we had zero light other than what was coming through that front window. And we were 2 doors down was a dress. This is the best part, a dress rental place. And her daughter trained with me, but they were going out of business. And so we called the landlord. We took over that dress rental location, which at the time was, I think, 1,684 square feet, small, small. But the best part was all that, we moved down to that location, did all the demo, got the stuff, got things going. And now I actually had some money. So we had mats and we had all the things, right? But, dads would walk into it, but I didn't have enough money to buy new channel letters. So out of dress rentals, I was able to, save all the letters that would help to make karate and then only buy the other ones that I needed to put up. But the dads would walk into this place and like, can we please get that sign changed? He's like, the dads would always say, because we're tired of walking into a dress rental place every time we bring our kids to karate class.
Yeah.
So we went there, and that's when we started doing the fitness kickboxing rage was real big back then. Taibo and UBC program and all that stuff. So then I had saw a gal that I hadn't seen for a while and reconnected with her. She was a big fitness gal, so I brought her in. We started doing fitness kickboxing in the morning, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 9 a.m. classes. I was doing martial arts at night, and things were going well. Had staff, and things were going great. And then they came in. Her and like 2 coaches came in on a Friday or Saturday and say, "Just so you know, we're done." They contacted all of our people. I think we had about 110 people in that program at the time. They moved them all to a different location, right? And people say, "Wow, what about non-compete?" Yeah, none of that shit really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So they ripped
Wait,
that
so
program
this
apart.
was your student that just stole all your students?
This was not a student. They were an employee. They were someone I knew outside the business to bring in to run that fitness kickboxing program, right?
Mm.
And so that destroyed that. Um, and that location happened to be next to a Wells Fargo bank.
So was that part of your martial arts school? Or was that separate?
That
Like,
was part of
did
the
your
martial arts school. So those
so your
classes
gr
were 5 a.m. in the morning till 9 a.m. And then we taught our martial art classes at night, right?
so did your revenue take a nosedive after that, or it didn't really matter because it wasn't the martial arts revenue?
I tried to preserve as much as I could. So while this is happening, these are the shitstorms that happen, right? While this is happening, the landlord, when I negotiated the deal with the landlord, he's like, "Yeah, just go in there and we'll figure out rent later on." Well, dude, like 13
Figure
months
out
had
rent.
passed, and
Yeah,
we didn't pay anything for rent. It was like amazing, right?
yeah.
Well, Wells Fargo Bank was next door to us, and these shopping center walls are so thin. and we had bought the Focus Masters. Do you remember those that you connect to the wall? You can connect them to the wall. They come off the wall, and then you have attachments for them. So anyway, we
Uh-uh.
connected them to the wall, and so we're banging on 'em. The walls are shaking, and their computer screens on the other side of the wall are shaking. They're upset. They call the landlord. So now we get evicted, and so like, hey, you got to be out in 30 days. So
But
I'm
you didn't pay any rent for a
I didn't pay
year.
any rent for 13 months. So that part of it was okay, right? That part was
That's
okay.
amazing.
But I had to figure out where I was going to go. And, we were doing okay. But dude, I wasn't keeping stats. I wasn't keeping financials, numbers. I wasn't doing any of that stuff at that time. So there was a big 4,800 square foot location about a mile and a half down the road, main drag, all glass. And I remember it was $4,800 a month for rent. And I had a fishing trip coming up going to Canada, and I didn't want to miss the fishing trip. So I went and I created a bogus like projection sheet, financial projection for 5 years, and I gave it to the landlord because they wanted to see something, and it was $4,800 a month for rent, and I'm like 24 years old at the time, right? That's all. That was a lot of money back then, man. 4,800 bucks a month for rent for me was a lot, especially in this town, and it was way too much square footage. So I was going to take half. So this was happening in the process. Half of it was going to be martial arts school. The other half was going to be for fitness kickboxing. Well, they came in, dropped the information on me. We had signed that lease, 5-year lease. Now I had 4,800 square feet. I tried to save as many people in the fitness kickboxing as possible, but you know the deal when you're a one person operation. So my ass was up at 4:30 in the morning, going to the school, teaching 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock fitness kickboxing, go home, sleep, come back, teach nighttime classes. And I think I maybe saved 15 or 20 of the people. But after about 2 months, I finally just tapped out. I said, ladies, I appreciate your loyalty, but I can't do it anymore. We're done. And I just shut that part of the business down. And then we literally operated out of one side of that martial arts school for years, man, for a few years. So, and then I started hiring more staff and employees on the martial arts side. And then that's where things started to get, a little bit better. And that's where I first dabbled in outside consulting programs and getting different ideas and what we could do. And, I did a program that the big thing with the program back then was cash outs, and you cash everybody out. And I was a damn good student, man. We cashed out like 92% of our student base. And times were good. But again, as a young kid, I didn't have the discipline, and I was living off tomorrow's dollars today, spending all the money, didn't know how to recruit to replace the billing. And, as a result, went into foreclosure on my house, went into bankruptcy. I mean, dude, I've got stories that, people are like, well, why did you stay in martial arts? Well, part of it is I don't know that I really had another skill set, and I really didn't have a plan B, right? It was like, I'm going to make plan A work regardless. Um,
Wait, so when you say cash out, you mean you had people pay their bills early and
yeah.
get some
So if
sort
we
of
sign
discount or
somebody up on
something?
a 36-month Black Belt Club program as an example, right? The big taboo upgrade subject in the industry. Um, and they're paying their 200 bucks a month, right? And they might have 24 payments left on their program. So if they've got 4,800 bucks on their program left, dude, I remember the script. I literally call them up. I go, Mrs. Smith, I got some great news. I just got the okay from the billing company to save your family 20% on the remaining balance of Johnny's program. So if you want to make a single installment, you can save yourself whatever it was. If it was 5 grand, you save yourself $1,000. You can make a single installment. If you want to bring a check in, or I'll tell you what, if you want to make it convenient for both of us, I can go ahead and take card number over the phone. Do you want to use a credit card? Or do you want to pay by check? And I'd take the card over the phone, take it for the full amount, and they would have no payments now, right, for the next 20 months or 30 months or whatever it was. If they would say no to that, I would say, well, look, I understand right now is not the best time for you guys to take advantage of the savings, but with your permission in the future, if the savings does come up again, would it be okay if I gave you guys a buzz? Yeah, no problem. Well, this was happening on a monthly basis because the problem, there's a difference between paid in fulls and cash outs, right? A paid in full is when someone comes into your school and you offer them, 4 or 5 different ways that they can pay for the program. So everyone pays the same amount, but they all pay differently based on how they pay. So if someone wants to pay in full when they first come into your school, that's different than having somebody who's on billing and then pulling them and cashing them out off of your billing check. And that's what we were doing. We were taking people and cashing them out. And as a result of that, the recurring revenue started to drop. and then you relied on getting paid in fulls every month in order to meet your monthly expenditures. And so it was this dark hole. Like I couldn't stop doing paid in fulls. It was almost like it was or cash outs. It was almost like not it was addiction. It was a necessity. I was going to say it's an addiction, but it was a necessity at the time. And then slowly I had to start to balance where I'd only offer it to some people and get the rest of the people on billing, so I could manage to get myself and crawl back out of that hole. And so it was after that where I went to a MAIA Super Show, and I was there. Now remember I hired employees for the martial arts side of things, and I wasn't a business guy, and I was using QuickBooks for everything, and so I do payroll on QuickBooks. Well, the old time on QuickBooks, you'd have to look at the tax rate and you take off their 941 taxes off their payroll and you cut them the net check. Well, then you're supposed to send over your 941 payments to the IRS, and I didn't do that. And so I had this $20,000 outstanding debt to the IRS for 941 holding. This is all my 20s, man. Talk about not knowing things, right? And just being ignorant, not wanting to learn. That $20,000 tax debt over 7 years, I'll never forget. The IRS agents came walking into my business, turned into $150,000 in tax liability. And I remember thinking, man, this is just, I'm buried. There's nothing I can do. But when I went to that super show, long story short, I was there the last night I was there. I went to pay for my meal with my debit card, and my debit card didn't work. And I was like, what's going on? Well, they levied all my accounts, sucked all the money out of my accounts, right? And so I remember going back home, and I remember negotiating with the IRS. And this is I mean, the IRS agent that I worked with was phenomenal. Long story short, I got back to the $20,000 original tax debt that I had, got rid of all the penalties, interest, and everything else. She was amazing, because she just knew where I was, and then was able to pay that and then move
I think
forward.
I think you're the only person that's ever, said, "I found an amazing IRS tax agent. If you could get me this person's number, that'd be great."
100%. I never forget her name, man. I'll never forget her name, and I'll never forget what she, because it was around Christmas time, and I remember she could see the look in my face, like I was absolutely devastated. I tapped out. It was brutal, but that's where I learned about the coaching and MAIA, and then that's when I jumped on as a client with MAIA. And because people do things for one of two reasons, right? They're either trying to avoid pain or they're trying to seek pleasure. And I strongly believe most people will do more to avoid pain than they will to seek pleasure. And man,
Yep.
pain had added up for me so much that I literally was willing to listen and do anything that it took to get me out of where I was. And I remember consulting at the time, it was $1,000 a month. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I got it. Life was just rough. And by the way, but I made the decisions to get there to make myself, make life rough for me, right? So I don't blame anybody but myself. But then that was in July, and we had done 240 grand, I think, the year prior in gross revenue. And again, even then, I'm like, I didn't know how to set goals, so I'm like, man, if I could do 30,000 a month, that would be amazing, right? Which is a static goal and a silly way to set goals, but I didn't know any better. So I said, I'm gonna do 360,000. So that was in July. By September, I had everything kind of implemented, and we tore off. We cut once, we cut deep, we did everything that we needed to do. And literally, I remember the following year in December, we were at $356,000 in revenue on like December 16th. It was our graduation night, and we had an upgrade that came through for like 4 grand. Like literally hit $360,000 that following year, which was amazing, right? And the next
Yeah.
year went to 440, and then to 552, and then to 661, then 720. I mean, we just kept having these six-figure jumps every year. And we don't do after school, we don't do summer camps. That was one location, martial art dollars. And that's where things got to be really exciting for me. So it was a lot of pain, a lot of trials and tribulations. I mean, man, from the time I was 20 when I opened my first school till probably 35, 36 years old, it was a rough go for me in the martial arts business, man. Rough.
Mm. So you say it took 15 years for you to
Yeah.
feel really comfortable or feel good about it?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So at what point did you end up deciding to open up a second location?
So the second location was when our first school hit 660,000 or whatever it was that year. I literally had 5 full-time employees. We had 285 students at that school, and we had somebody that was a senior instructor that wanted to move to chief, but our chief wasn't going anywhere. So, I'm a big advocate of now, I had opened up a second location in the past for all the wrong reasons. We won't even talk about that. But I'm a big advocate now. You don't open a second location um, for ego. You don't open a second location for more money or for more time. You open a second location to provide opportunities for your staff and for your juniors,
Yeah.
right? And so that's
Yep.
that's the reason why I did it, was because I wanted to give this other guy an opportunity. And so, we took that power team, we split them apart, and we opened the second location. Um, and that was back in, well, that was 7 years ago. Yeah, 7 years ago. So whenever that was, so
Okay,
16,
cool.
2016.
And then did the second location gangbusters like the first one because you already knew all the systems, or was it a slow burn?
Second location started off really, really strong. Um, but then, here's what you gotta know, right? Like if you're gonna open up a second unit, and these are things you come to learn, you always gotta prepare and feel like, okay, well, what if you lose 2 key staff members in the next 6 months? Are you gonna be okay? And it's maybe some people think of that as being a pessimist, but it's a real thought, right? Because once you get a taste of not being on the floor and having to teach every day or having to be in your school every day, look, I can go to my school and teach anytime I want. Sorry, I got this on mute. Anytime I want to, but it's interesting. There's not many times I want to go do it, but I certainly can. I love working with the black belts on occasion and doing things like that. Um, but I just don't. I love my life, and I love the freedom and flexibility that being a martial art business owner gives me. So you got to be mindful about some of these things. And sure enough, we actually hired somebody. And now looking back over the years, this person was very toxic, and we started losing key staff members one by one. And this particular person is literally, single-handedly responsible for us losing probably about 5 of our key staff members. So over COVID, we had that dynamic going on. And then of course you have COVID going on. So we have a toxic, and team member, and we've got COVID going on. And the two of those, basically it was a train wreck. And so we decided to regroup. We were on a skeleton crew, so we regrouped back into one location, got all of our team there, and we rebuilt that. And now, we've got a great team. And when we're ready, and when we have team members that are ready, we'll pop up in another location that side of town. That was just a business decision for me. And quite frankly, it was because if one of those chief instructors decided they wanted to go do something else or something happened, I'd be on the floor every day teaching. And that was the business decision that I made to go back to one, merge back.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't wanna backtrack
Right.
in your career
100%.
and go back to what yeah,
Yep.
I think first of all, I think you're brave to talk about it. I think most people would probably just try to hide it, right? Especially, like, as a consultant and to help other people, you probably feel a little bit of pressure, like, everything you gotta do is perfect and great because 'cause you're helping other people, and I feel that pressure too, but hey, like, I had, uh, 4 1, 2, 3, 4 at least 4 full-time employees leave in 3.5 years. So,
Yeah.
I would hire and then rehire and then rehire. And 2 of them left because of COVID. They had a small child. And they're like, we don't want to be here. Um, and then the other two like weren't necessarily great fits anyway, but like, lasted for a little while. But like, if there's that much turnover, school doesn't do well.
Right.
Right? It's, like, only getting worse, and it's, like, it's easy to have momentum in a positive direction, or it's easier to build momentum in a positive direction than to stop a train going downhill and then move it in a positive direction, right?
100%.
So now, now I'm going through that with one of the locations is like, okay, well, we've had so much turnover, had so many people leave. How are we gonna turn this train around?
Right.
And it's freaking hard. It's way harder now than it was building it up originally.
That's right. They get attached to your key people, right? And that's part
Yeah.
of that's the hard part with this industry is, you know, and then trying to find people. I mean, some people are in pockets, in your area. I'm not saying it's easy, right? Because it's not. But in Green Bay or Appleton, Wisconsin, it's not like we're the mecca for martial arts, right? So
Yeah.
East Coast, West Coast, there's it's more saturated. There's more opportunity. Not saying that people are necessarily better, but there's definitely more opportunity. But dude, I mean, being on, you go on Indeed and you're paying $300 a month on Indeed, trying to find instructors, especially when they're coming from outside the organization, is two things. They got to be great, and they got to be willing to change and adapt to do your systems and what you do, right? It's extreme. Program directors are much easier to find and get hired and get trained in, but instructors, I say this to people all the time, I sound like a client because the clients will say, well, my town's different or this whatever, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when I say this, I feel like I sound like a client sometimes, but man, martial arts is different. It's just, this isn't like the local Walmart where we got to train someone to be a nighttime cash register and they got to learn how to scan items and give change back. Like they got to know, they have to have the knowledge and know martial arts, and they've got to be charismatic, and they've got to be a good role model, and I mean, they have to have all the things, right? And so, fortunately for me, I had an instructor that wanted to try something different a few years ago. Went and did something different, and has come back now because he realizes how much he missed martial arts and his passion for it. And that break, I think, was actually he said, I said, "How you feeling?" He goes, man, he goes, I'm sad, but I'm happy. I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, I'm just sad that I left. I said, now, I said, I think that was a gift because I don't know if you would have realized how much you missed what you were doing if you wouldn't have had to take that break. And I mean, when you find the right team, I'll tell you in the last, because we've had changeover in the last 4 weeks. I can talk about hiring family. That's a whole other problem. So we had a lot of changeover in the last four
Yeah.
weeks, and it's been a 180 shift in the excitement, the energy, the passion, the culture of the students, the culture of the team. Everything's done a 180 in the last 4 weeks. So if you can find the right team, it can happen quickly. But yes, normally it's a very slow process to try and rebuild and get back to where it's a relationship business, man. I mean, people quit martial arts, they don't quit relationships, but they will quit if they lose that relationship. So if that chief instructor is a key person, they're no longer there. It's pretty easy for mom and dad to not want their kids to train anymore, the kid not to want to train because they have that relationship.
Yeah, especially since it doesn't matter how good the new person is. Like I always tell, like whenever we had new instructors, it was like, listen, I could get a new instructor that's Jackie Chan, but it's not, you know, Mr. Smith, right? And like
Right.
that's who you know and love. But kids don't have the same teacher in first grade to eighth grade, right? They switch teachers every year, so we have to be willing to adapt. And I understand how emotionally it can be tough, but this is what kids need to learn how to do, or adults need to learn how to do. You're not gonna have the same teacher forever,
That's right. A funny
right?
story about that. So a couple years ago, I decided I was going to suit up and get on the floor and teach. And so, I hadn't been in classes for years at that point. And so I get my uniform. It's an intermediate class, and this kid comes up and he's got his green belt on, and the belt's freaking just looks like an absolute mess. And he bows on the
It's
mat, and I'm like, "Hey," I said, "Stop." I said, "You're a green belt. You can't come on the mat with your belt looking like that." I said, "Step off the mat and get your belt fixed." So he gets off the mat and he's trying to figure his belt out, and I think I had somebody help him or whatever. And next day we get an email from the parent, and the parent says, I don't know who the new guy is, but we don't like him very much. So it was pretty funny, man. But to your point, they enjoy their that they were used to this instructor that they started with, and even though the owner, right, who's been doing this for 100 years, came back in, they did not like me as an instructor, which is pretty
How did you tell him, like, that you're the owner?
funny.
Or did you
The
tell him and
team
now you
the
just
team did. They said, "Yeah, that was the owner." And they're like, "Okay, well, I haven't changed my mind. I don't like the way he dealt with my child." So it was actually pretty
damn. I'm assuming you
funny.
smooth that over eventually.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was fine, right? But I mean, we have expectations of what our product is. So even though I'm not at that school on a regular basis, I still have an expectation of what I want our classes to look like, the level of discipline, the level of pride these students take, and what we're delivering as a product. I don't care what we charge or how much we make. Like, I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to make sure we've got a great quality product. and that we're giving people, what it is that they're paying for. And so that's always been big on my hit list, is to provide that product and that service the way I would want to do it. And I always say, it's hard to get it maybe the way you'd want it and the way you do it, but it's way easier to, we talk about, yeah, do we want to impact more lives? Of course, that's the goal, right? It's always easier to scale when you have a team. Does it mean that there's going to be some sacrifice? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of sacrifice, maybe in the way that the way you want things specifically. But I also believe there's a lot more creativity, and we find new things and new ways when we have a great team that's on board and everyone's working together, and we can get further faster, essentially.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And um, when you had to close that second location because of bad culture and COVID and all, the
Mhm.
plethora of things, did that like hurt your ego? Was that like painful for you?
Well, here's the thing. So you said earlier, like being transparent as a consultant, right? So, I remember I had at our last event, I had talked about, a gambling addiction that I had for 4 years. And I remember telling some people I was going to talk about, and they're like, "You do not do that. You do not need to get up front of people and tell them about that." It's interesting how many people came up to me after that particular event that we had and shared personal stories about addictions, not gambling necessarily, but addiction that they've had, and that they've been struggling with, and they needed to hear. Here's my thing: like, I think social media is a highlight reel of people's lives, right? That's really what it is. Very rarely do you see all the bullshit behind the scenes, right? That they're going through, and I think I relate better to people if they know, like, hey, he's forget the consultant thing, right? It's like, I'm not a big fan of titles in our industry either, like master, like on the floor, like, don't call me master, man. But and everyone's different on that, right?
I was gonna call you Supreme King
The
this whole
supreme
time, but
deluxe,
forget it now.
yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm calling you schmuck this whole time.
Love it, love it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, listen, man, I'm just a person who's made a lot of mistakes, and if I can be the conduit to help you avoid some of those things and get you to from where you are to where you want to go faster, then that's great. And if I can be more relatable, because some of you are afraid to talk about the fact that you had some tax problems or a gambling problem, or you went through foreclosure, or you went through bankruptcy, or all the things that can look, man, it's life, and we all make mistakes. And if I can be more relatable, then I certainly will be. So, was it hard to close a second location? Yes. And the reason it was hard, not from an ego standpoint, necessarily, um, but more from the consulting side of things. Like, well, what will the clients think, right? Like, he can't operate two schools. And it wasn't about not being able to operate. It was just about, look, it was a business decision. We always say, business is hard. There's certain decisions in this business, in any business, that are very difficult to make. Could I have kept it open? Yeah. Could I put on the facade that we have two schools and everybody think everything's fine? Of course, nobody would know the wiser, but it wasn't the right business decision, and that's got to be what's first and foremost. So when somebody else is in a situation where they're struggling and we've got to make a tough business decision, I can use that as a lesson for them. Like,
You
look,
can
it'd have been
relate.
way easier to keep both schools open and have this facade and this image as opposed to closing it.
Yeah. That's really insightful. And I feel like every time I've shared something personally that has been tough for me, even though I'm nervous about it, I'm extremely nervous, even though later in my head, I'm like, "Oh my god, I should go delete that. I should go delete everything. I should delete it all. I don't want anyone to see it. Like, what am I saying?" Whenever I share something like that, mistakes I made, it only makes people closer to me and only makes me feel better about it. Like, there'll be times where I'm paranoid, like, "God damn, why did I do that?" But, like, people will bring it up to me, "Hey, I saw your story about blah, blah, blah," just like they saw your story about the gambling, and, like, that's what they talk to me about. They don't talk to me about, like, "Oh, I saw your school did blah, blah, blah this month." Like,
Right.
okay, yeah, like, who cares? I mean, that's nice, right? Like, but that's people wanna know that, like, other people have gone through the same difficult times. Like, honestly, I, posted maybe this, like, 2 years ago at this point when I lost, $187,000 investing in Voyager, which is a company. Do you know what that is?
Hmm.
Yeah, so a company that does crypto, um,
Yep.
and, they went bankrupt overnight, and, I had $187,000 in that account, which was, like, a year of profit right? Like this is after-tax money, right? So that's really like 250K and like gone overnight. And it's like, and it wasn't like crypto went down. If crypto went down, then like that's a risk I take, right? This
Right.
is like
Gone.
a publicly trading company going bankrupt that was sponsored by, the biggest they were on like NASCAR, right? And like it was run by the guy who ran E-Trade,
It'd be like
right? It's not some
Coinbase
like
right now going under.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I actually so I ended up getting some of the money back, ended up getting 30% back,
Okay.
which was like finding money. Like, I couldn't even believe it. Like this is a year and a half later. I have to go through the bankruptcy proceedings. Oh, sorry. I ended up getting more than that back. I ended up getting 80K back because it was in US direct coin, which is like
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like
USD
cash,
coin.
they
Yeah.
say. Right. And then so that I got back. Um, and I transferred that money to USDC from another coin maybe 2 days before they went bankrupt.
Is that
And
right?
so I just got super lucky, super lucky. Yeah, like my friend was telling me
Oh,
that he runs a crypto YouTube channel and he's like, "Hey, you should take your money off and put it on a whatever those flash drive things are."
oh
And
yeah.
but it was too much work. I was about to go away. I was about to travel and I was like, I can't do that now. It's like a whole thing. I have to figure that as a couple hour operation. I'll just put some money in USDC. So I did that. Um, and then yeah, I ended up getting 30% back also from the bankruptcy proceedings. But like I was devastated. When I woke up and saw like that money was now I can't even access it. And I didn't know if I was gonna get back any of it. Like I assumed none of it was
Right.
gonna get back. I was like, I'm an idiot. Why did I do this? I should only invest in myself or invest in like, I don't know, more, investments with more of a historical, I don't know, foundation than just random crypto because I'm just following the wave of excitement, which is the exact opposite of what you should do for long term investment and wealth. So anyway, so
I
yeah, when I shared that, like, I still have people that reach out to me now and be like, "Hey, whatever happened with that?" Or like, uh, and like that was very scary for me to share because it's like a lot of freaking money. But then I also had a lot of people that are way ahead of me in business. Like one of the people was like, Ron Sal, he does Spark, right? So he was like, "Hey man, like congratulations." Like, "What do you mean congratulations?" He's like, "Well, one time I made one coding error with our software,
was it five hundred
and
thousand dollar error or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Saw that one.
$500,000. It was a coding error, and I was like, "Damn!" Like, all right, I appreciate that. And like now, I won't make that same mistake. So I gotta live it the hard way, right? But you can share the things that aren't working. Like just like I just shared, hey, like one of my schools that's so much turnover, it's going the wrong direction for a while. It's like, how do I turn that train around? I feel like
Right.
I'm doing everything I need to do or have to do, but it still takes time. It still takes time to have a culture shift. It's hard. It's freaking hard.
It is, man.
Um, what's your least favorite part about consulting? What part do you not like?
Well, I would say that the hardest part probably probably two things. The hardest part is not finishing people's sentences for them because I already know what they're going to say. But in all fairness, I need to listen to their story because everybody has
Yep.
their story, right? And I just want to dive in and just like roll the sleeves up and let's just go. Let me help. Let's get it done, right? I don't need to listen to the 30-minute story. I already know everyone's got baggage. We got like, let's just go. Um, and then probably the other most difficult part with consulting are the clients that say that they're ready to make changes and they want to do it and they're ass draggers and they don't do anything. And it's the same call over and over, or it's excuses, and we're just not getting things done because doing this now for a period of time and literally, I've had probably over 200 clients now, right, over the years. I know that the people that take action get massive results with what we do, right? And so I get so frustrated when somebody doesn't want to listen. I just want to shake them and be like, dude, you don't know what's on the other side of you saying no. Like I do. Not because I'm so smart. I've just seen it hundreds of times before and I know what's ahead. Like you just need to have some faith and some blind trust and understand the process and the system and follow it and do it and you'll be amazed at what happens. But and we see this happen a lot with clients that are desperate. Like I remember I had a client that came to the Super Show and he was grossing $5,500 a month. That was back in 2016. He was one of my first clients, as a matter of fact, and still with me today. And now that school does $1.2 million a year. Right here we are,
Wow.
7 years later. Phenomenal, phenomenal people, great people, action takers. Right. And then sometimes I have people that are coming to me and they're doing 50, 60,000 a month in their school and they're already doing a great job. Like I say, listen, congratulations. I mean, it's not easy for people to get to 50, 60 grand a month in one location and you figured it out. But they're oftentimes the ones that are the most apprehensive to change things because they feel like they have so much more to lose. So they
Mhm.
want to protect that 50K a month they're bringing in, even though I know I can get them to 80K a month in the next 90 to 120 days. They don't want to make those leaps because they feel like they just don't want this 50 or 60,000 a month to fall apart. So that's probably the hardest thing, man, is just not finishing people's stories for them, and then clients that don't execute and don't take action. Those are the two hardest ones.
Yeah, honestly, I feel the same way, especially about number 2. Number 1, I feel like I developed, like, pretty good listening skills through being a program director at the school myself for many
Right,
years,
right,
especially you hear the same stories from parents over and over again, and
right,
you just wanna interrupt, and, like, I've interrupted many times, and then I've had other instructors say, "Matt, shut the F up. Like, just let them continue." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right." So I feel like I've gotten pretty good at that.
yeah,
Um but the other part, yeah, just not listening to advice. It's like, "Hey, you paid me to be here." And it's like, we talked about this week after week after week. And I promise you, if you do it, I know you're gonna see the result, but you need to do it. And like one of the things I started doing is I stopped accepting clients who had another job. Like if they had working another job, like martial arts is not their main job. I just found that those people, like it's just hard for them to really get to where they want to go. You can get to a certain level of success doing
right,
that. But
right.
like unless you go all in, it's really hard to get to where you wanna go.
It is,
Um,
man. Yeah, and don't be, and this is the other one, like, don't be on the phone at freaking Home Depot while you're on a client call. Like, be present, be in front of your notebook, taking notes, be engaged, be involved, because time is valuable for all of us. And if you're not going to take the call seriously, then let's schedule for a different
yeah,
time.
exactly. If you're in your car or something, like, get out of here.
Yeah,
No, like, let's be in front of a computer with a notepad. Let's do this.
right on.
But I do enjoy and honestly, like, I think I feel a little bit differently than you. The ones that are doing well, let's say their school's already doing over 30K a month or something. It's the bare minimum. They're already doing 30, 40, 50. I like talking to those people a little bit more, I would say, because yes, it takes more to get them to the next level, right? 'Cause but they're already pretty smart, and they've already shown
Right,
that they can grow a business, which is freaking hard.
right.
So I generally enjoy those a little bit more because they just kinda, like, get it, right? They're probably a little bit more slow moving with implementing because 'cause they're so stuck in their ways, but I've noticed that the people that do really well talk about all the things they're doing wrong, and the people that are doing most of the things wrong always talk about all the things they're doing great. And
Yeah,
it's like, so do you get the same thing? Where it's like
interesting.
it's like
Yeah, that's a great point.
yeah,
That's a great. And to your point, like if I say this like at the Super Show. I use the Super Show just as an example, but because where we just have a lot of FaceTime with people, right? But if someone come up to me and like, hey, we have 80 students, we've been open for 20 years, and we're doing $8,000 a month. Okay. Or if I have someone who has 200 students, they've been open for 20 years, and they're doing 25,000 a month. I would way rather have person number two. There's something wrong with person number one where they've been open for 20 years. They only have 80 students, and there's definitely a challenge, and that person is way harder to grow and takes more time, effort, and energy. I think to get through mindset problems, not because they're harder to grow, but they've got a thick skull for some reason. And it's just hard to get
yeah,
through to them. But yeah, people that I see, kind of the sweet spot for me is I look at people, if they have $150 student value or less in their school and they've got 150 plus students, they're super, super easy for us to leverage up and get to the next level. But it's those people I say that start off at 50, 60, 70,000 a month that are already doing that consistently in their schools that sometimes are just not all of them. Because we've had, like, I had a guy came in, they were doing 900,000 a year in their school. They're on track for 1.6 this year. So,
wow,
they're doing phenomenal in their school, right? And he came on to get help when he was doing 900 grand a year in his school, right? But they
right,
were there again, they took action. But in specifically, I'm gonna throw a stone, but it's specifically more of the MMA and BJJ schools that are successful at 50, 60 grand a month that have a little bit, not all of them, right? But the handful that I have of those students, that are clients that don't want to do it, there's a handful of them that happen to be in the BJJ and MMA world. Um, but it's true across the board for everybody. So it's just an interesting perception that we see. But then sometimes we have breakthroughs. I had a client the other day said, "Okay, I'm all in," and I've been working with them for 3 months. And I said, "Who is this?" And he responds with his name. I'm like, "No, that was a joke. Like, I know it's you, but what have you done with the other guy? Where is he that didn't want to make any changes?" I said, "This is awesome. Let's move forward. Let's get it done." But it's
Yeah.
very rewarding. That's the thing, man, right? Like, regardless, and the cool part about consulting, you probably do the same thing, but we do a flat rate, right? So I have no horse in the race. Whether you make an extra 1,000 a month or an extra 20,000 a month, it doesn't matter to me, right? I don't get paid any differently on how much you make. And so I just genuinely love helping people grow. I love seeing their excitement. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, when you make people money, they love you, right? And that's
Yep.
that's a fun place to be as well.
Yeah, nothing better than getting a text like, "This
Yeah,
month we did blah, 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 blah." You know,
right.
screenshot, it makes your whole fricking day.
That's right. That's
Exact opposite feeling when you get a text from a student that's quitting or something.
yes, 100%.
Um, so thank you so much for being on here, and I wanna know, just quick question, like, last one, if you had to pick one book that was the most instrumental for you in your career, what would you choose?
Man, that's tough. Do you stump people with this question a lot? Because there's a lot of good ones, man.
Only you, everyone else knew right
Everyone
away.
else
You're a little
knew
slow.
right away.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
because I don't read, man, so I can't give you a good one.
yeah. This
No,
this is what happens when you drop out of college.
that's right. I mean, just because it was early on, and I did a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, and I did a lot of Zig Ziglar stuff early on, but I remember, I think, really understand the difference about business, and there's a ton of them. But I'm gonna say cash flow quadrant just because for me, in my mind, it really helped me to identify where I wanted to be. As far as, do I want to be an employee or self-employed or own a business or be an investor? So that idea of moving from that left column over to the right column, um, there's I think a lot of better ones, but I think because it was early on for me when I was in my 20s and it made sense to me, and it kind of paved the way for knowing what I wanted to accomplish.
Very cool. Yeah, I haven't read that one, so thanks for the recommendation. If you're listening to this and you wanna find Shane, how do you find you?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to jump on, they can jump on Facebook. It's just Shane Tassoul. You'll find me on Facebook. It's probably the easiest way. Otherwise, my cell's 920-450-5425. If they want to
Damn,
give me
throwing
a
out the cell
buzz,
phone
they
number.
can give me a
Yeah,
buzz.
you're getting spam like
That's
crazy.
right.
Forget it. I
I'm an
put your
open
number
book,
on
man.
Craigslist.
I'm an open book. If anyone wants to call, chat. If we can help, great. If we can't help, I'll let you know that too. But man, we're just here. Thank you, me. I mean, all of us, right? We're here to help the industry. So we don't want the martial arts school down the road to be unprofessional, because that is a bad look for us as well. And so if we can help
Absolutely.
raise the industry as a group, and there's a lot of people that can do that. And I always just say, find somebody that resonates with you and go do that. But too many people try and go and pick and choose different things, and they don't understand the systems that are behind all those things. So, go work with someone, whoever that is, right? That you're going to put in the time, effort, and energy to work with, so you can understand the whole system and make the whole system work for you. I've heard in the past, it's like a buffet, take a little here, take a little there, but it just doesn't operate well. It's like taking a engine from a Ford with a chassis from a Chevy and trying to put the doors of a Tesla on it. It doesn't work, right? You got to have the same system, and yes, it's always important to learn and grow, but I think too many people are too quick to implement and execute, not knowing this one thing and all the other things that happen behind that one thing in that system.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, too many chefs could ruin the soup,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Cool. Thank you so much for being on here. If you have any questions, you can reach me on Instagram at blackbeltbrenner1, or you can email me, Matthew at wdojo.com. Thank you for listening. Bye, guys.